Today's video is sponsored by Third Wave Water. There's this massive gap in the world of espresso machines that we've all just sort of accepted. Either you can have a machine that's approachable, relatively affordable, works out of the box, minimal learning curve, or you can have a machine with real capabilities. Stable temperatures, different types of profiling, lots of data and sensors, the kind of depth that makes coffee enthusiasts happy. What you can't have, historically, is both of those things in one machine. The approachable machines will protect you from yourself to a certain degree, but also will cap your ceiling. And the more complex machines will reward expertise while simultaneously demanding it from you. Everything in between is kind of on a spectrum, giving up something from one end or the other. The fellow Espresso Series 1, however, is the first time that I've really seen that deal been renegotiated. I'm a couple months in with this machine, and here's what I mean. Sarah, come on in. Is that good?
Yeah.
All right. Tell me about your experience with espresso machines overall.
They're too complicated, and I quit.
Okay, tell me how you really feel, though. No, I'm just kidding. That's good. Is it my fault?
Yes.
Okay.
There were too many changing variables that I didn't know how to adjust to get the result that I wanted. So if the coffee was different, I didn't know what to do with the machine. I didn't know what to do with the grinder. I didn't know what to do with the coffee, what buttons to press.
Sorry about that.
And because our machines are always changing, I never know how to work the steam wand to make a milk drink. So I'm not a stupid person. I just don't have time to learn all.
Okay, that's true. You're not a stupid person. This is just not your thing.
It's just not important to me to learn all the variables.
You have other things.
I just would like a good cup of coffee, and I love Americanos.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So tell me about your experience with the Series 1.
It's cute.
Okay.
That counts. So you were away. You had surgery, and I had to use this for a week by myself.
Mm-hmm. How was that?
I liked it. Now, the coffee stayed the same, which was a huge help. But I knew what to do to turn it on. Sometimes I don't even know how to turn them on. So I would just put coffee in the portafilter and put it in and press the button, and it would work.
Okay. So easy to use.
Yeah.
Easy to use, easy to walk up to, intuitive, good workflow, makes sense to you. Okay.
I like being able to make coffee for a friend when she comes over.
Yeah.
Instead of having to call you.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
So the Series 1 can both make for an easy, intuitive experience for somebody like Sarah who has no interest in learning the ins and outs of what can make espresso really nerdy and geeky, while simultaneously scratching that exact same itch that I have to do that to the extreme. Now, the Series 1 is not without its compromises, and there are compromises in order to get that magic combo down to the price of $1,500 US. And we're going to talk about all that too. But the way that this machine straddles those two different poles of experience is honestly pretty impressive. More impressive than I expected, actually. This unit was sent to me by Fellow, and what really makes this coffee machine interesting is actually under the hood. The Series 1 doesn't use a traditional boiler design that a lot of espresso machines would use. It uses a low thermal mass, what they call boosted boiler system, and it's fundamentally different from basically any other machine on the market. Now, what that means in the day-to-day is that this machine heats up in like 2 minutes. And once it is running, it runs at a very high degree of performance when it comes to flow and temperature. Now, without getting too in the weeds, the way that it does that, number one, is with a very small boiler that's in there. And that boiler warms up a lot more quickly than traditional espresso machines with much larger boilers would. Now, as that boiler gets refilled, as you use the machine, instead of dumping just straight cold water into that boiler, the water actually goes through a small heating element first, which does a preheat on the water so that by the time it's in the boiler, it's already pretty hot. And that makes the whole system a lot more efficient. Then, as the water is coming out of the boiler on its way to right here, this element right here is also actively heated, which provides another stage of temperature check and opportunity to adjust. All of these components are constantly being monitored by sensors and software and adjusted to provide consistent temperature of the water coming to the group. The way all of those things are designed and work together is the reason that the machine is the size that it is, the reason that it costs how much it does, and the reason that it performs the way it does. Now, any compromises aside, the machine is small, especially in comparison to a machine like that. It feels small and compact in a good way. It's not going to be domineering on your counter in any kind of way. The portafilter is a standard 58 millimeter size, and it's a lay flat design, so you can just lay it flat on your counter to do your puck prep, which is really nice. You don't need a portafilter holder or anything like that. It is a convertible bottomless portafilter, which is really nice for guys like me who want to run bottomless shots, but you can also tuck your spouts on there if you want to get a cleaner pull or a split shot. The portafilter feels very weighty and nice quality. And on the group head here, there are a couple little marks, and one of them shows where you put the portafilter in, and the other one shows where you lock it to. Now, when you're pulling this all the way, this mark on the front here shows a bit of a range. You don't need to crank it all the way to a straight 90 degree. It is a soft gasket in there that will wear in over time, so just pull it about hand tight. And once you have your preferred setting dialed in and selected on the machine, you just walk up and you press this piano key up here, and it will load up your preferred profile and pull a shot of espresso. It gives real-time readings on here, which is pretty cool, and it will automatically pull the exact shot profile that you have told it to. Let's see how this tastes. This is a whoosh whoosh from my dude Tanner at Portable Coffee. Absolutely delicious espresso. So good. Now, when you're all done, you can hold this down for a couple seconds, which will do a short rinse, and then you can leave it be. Now, that one-touch business is nice once you kind of have your head wrapped around the machine. But if you're coming up to this machine cold, you have really no idea how to use an espresso machine. What do? How do you make like a cappuccino? It has this guided mode where you can walk up to it, and on the screen, it'll show you this little menu, and it says make a drink on here. And you can just push this button in, and then you'll have a list of drinks where you can kind of scroll down and choose the drink that you want. If you want to make like a cappuccino or a latte, it will tell you how much coffee to grind up and put in the portafilter. It will tell you how to pull your shot of espresso. Then it will say, okay, get your milk pitcher and put this much milk in the pitcher, and it will tell you to start steaming, and then it will automatically steam to the right temperature. It'll stop once the little sensor at the bottom here has detected that the milk is at the right temperature for your drink, at which point you pour it into your latte cup. And then when you push this down, it will automatically purge itself. It guides you through the whole process for any drink that you may want to make. You know, when somebody has no interest in learning how to use espresso machines, they just want a simple guided process. And in our house, that's Sarah. And that's a lot of Sarahs in a lot of different houses. People like me are actually in the minority of this stuff that want to dial and tune and tweak, and I can do that and set a profile for Sarah if I want. But then when she walks up to use this machine, it is easy and simple. And that's something that a lot of people have tried to implement, and I have not actually seen done this well to this point. If you want to make like an Americano, it will tell you to put your thing under the water spout, and a little tap right here, a little water jet will shoot out and will fill up your Americano to the right volume. Also, if you subscribe to Fellow Drops, it will load up a specific profile for every coffee that is released through Fellow Drops. Or if you don't want to look at that at all, you can just turn that off. So if you want the hand holding, it's there. If you want the simple walk up and one touch, that is there. Then you get into the nerdy settings. And this is the zone where people like me like to live. I know it's a little crazy, but we're out there. This is where you can set things like temperature offsets, not just in general, like you can on some machines, but shot by shot. How much are you offsetting the temperature based on your warm-up routine? Or if you have something like a scase, like I do, to calibrate, you can really dial in on this stuff. Same with volumetrics, you can offset. You can build your own profiles with different pressure stages and timing. You can really go to some pretty extreme levels of nerdiness with this machine. And Nick Terzulli, the VP of R&D at Fellow, has made sure of this. If you don't know who Nick is, he's really was instrumental in guiding the development of this machine. And he has really worked to make sure that this machine can run with the top level of coffee nerds. He's been present in the enthusiast community since long before the Series 1 was ever announced. And since it has been announced, he's been in Discord servers and on Reddit, getting feedback, taking it from the community, and using all of that feedback to make the machine better. Nick, in a lot of ways, to me anyway, he almost makes this machine. You just don't see that level of engagement from somebody in a position like his. I can't ever think of one other time that I've seen something like that. The one touch mode, the guided mode, and the super nerd level options, all coexisting in one piece of equipment at a very competitive price, is something that no one has really done before, in my opinion at least. Now, I want to talk to those of you who are super nerds out there, and then we're going to circle back here on some of the compromises that have been taken in the development of this machine. The programming depth on this thing is really impressive. In one of the firmware updates since Fellow released this machine, they added in-app profile creation. And when you go to create a new profile, you can really adjust a lot in terms of how you want the machine to pull. Different infusion steps, pre-infusions, ramp downs, the whole works. And you can do it either on the machine itself or in the app and have it sync to your machine. You can do time-based or volumetric programming. It ships with light, medium, and dark roast espresso profiles. It also has a classic 9-bar shot profile, as well as turbo shot profiles, a lever profile, and there's a profile on there called a modern arc profile. That one was developed actually by Nick himself. And a lot of people in the enthusiast world have had great out-of-the-box results with that profile, myself included. I also have on here a profile that was developed by a friend of mine who owns a Londinium espresso machine. That's a lever machine. And he created this profile to mimic that machine and then shared it in a group chat that we have. And I can just copy the link, pulled right into my app, and I can try the exact profile that he is using at home with notes from him. Shout out to Andrew at Caldwell Coffee for that one. Now, because of all that digital integration, the Series 1 can also get over-the-air firmware updates from Fellow. They push those, and since I've gotten this machine, there have actually been several things that I had on my oh, this is a negative, this is a negative, this is a negative, and they've kind of been slowly getting eliminated leading up to this video. So the machine does continue to get better over time. And one thing in particular that blew my mind is you can actually go into the machine's menus and look at real-time sensor readouts for the majority of, or maybe even every sensor that is in here. You know, that's just not something that even comes close to existing in any machine at this price. And combined with the readout that you have on here as it's actually pulling the shot at $1,500, this is a pretty compelling package. One other really cool feature that nerds will appreciate is to do with water. And a lot of somewhat nerdy people will make their own coffee water. I think actually more people should do that. Third Wave Water is sponsoring today's video, and this is actually one of the biggest upgrades that you can make to your coffee from a taste perspective, in my opinion. But when you're setting up the Series 1, it will have you test your water and input into it the level of minerality of the water you're working with. So whether you're using a water additive, which is something I recommend, or if you're using tap water, you can configure the machine to work with that. Third Wave Water comes in several formulations for light, medium, and dark roast, as well as an espresso machine profile that is designed to really protect those boilers and internal components from scale. Now, with the design that this machine has, it should be more resilient in theory against some of that type of thing. But if you use something like Third Wave Water, your coffee is not only going to taste better, you're never going to have to give that a second thought. Highly recommend. And when you program the Series 1 with the ppm value of your water, it will automatically tell you when you need to descale and otherwise maintain the machine. Third Wave Water gives all my viewers 10% off a one-time order using the link below, so check that out. Overall, we have a lot of pretty crazy stuff going on with this thing under the hood. So for all that at $1,500, where are the compromises? Because surely to get all that in at this price, there are going to be some compromises somewhere. And a big one from the perspective of a lot of people is actually the amount of plastic. And there is a lot of plastic. You know, you have the metal drip tray right down here, which is nice for cleaning, the metal group head up here, the metal portafilter, which feels nice and beefy, and the steam wand. A lot of these touch points that you have your hands on a lot are feeling nice and metal and premium, but the rest of the machine, the outside and the inside, it's got a lot of plastic. And you know, when you tap on it, it kind of feels plasticky. The machine is made in China, as are all of Fellows products and a lot of other products. You know, all Breville's, for example, are going to be made in China as well. And when I'm putting videos like this together, I always ask companies about their labor manufacturing standards. So I will drop Fellows info on that down in the description. I think when it comes to fit and finish quality of materials, they've made some choices to up that experience in high touch point areas. And the rest of the machine, I think it actually feels kind of appropriate for the price that it is. Now, a couple other notes after, almost a few months of use on this thing. If you want to pull bottomless, which of course I'm a nerd, I like to do that. I like to see that espresso coming out. The back panel here has the potential to get a little messy, with splatters and stuff flying on there. And if you have issues with, let's say, obsessive cleaning of coffee equipment like I do, that might drive you a little crazy over time, especially this section over here. This knob can't come off. So, if you're trying to clean and get any smudges away from this area, that in particular can be a little bit of a pain. You can get around that by putting on the shot splitter under here, but that has been a little bit of a friction point for me. This group head up here, ours has a couple very, very slight scratches on the top. And I don't know if that was a dirty dishcloth or somebody's ring or putting a ceramic cup on there, but the way this is designed, it's practically begging to have you set stuff on it. So just be aware that that can scratch unless you're careful. Also, no cup warmer. A lot of espresso machines, you put the cup on and it will warm it up. That's kind of like a byproduct of thermal inefficiency, but it is kind of nice when you have a nice warm cup to pull your espresso into. This machine has this little silicone, cup station, but it doesn't ever actually get hot enough to warm a cup up. So I get it, but it's a note. Now, a couple things that the nerds will want to know, which are probably not an issue for most people. This machine has the potential, with the circuitry inside, to connect to a wireless scale via Bluetooth, which means, in theory, you could program it to stop once the espresso hits a certain weight. And this is a very desirable feature for a lot of enthusiasts, and is probably the most requested feature when it comes to the nerdy end of things with this machine. Don't know if Fellow will ever introduce that feature, but it is requested a lot. There are a couple, profiling nuances that some enthusiasts may want, or abilities to tweak other things that you might see on, a website forum or something. But really what this is delivering at this price is already so far ahead of what comparable machines are offering on the enthusiast end that mostly people are just really happy to have this functionality. Scheduled on off would be nice, but again, because the machine warms up so quickly, and you can even offset the first couple shots by a little more if you need to, you don't really need that extended long warm up that you would normally use on other machines. And one other compromise that may actually apply to a wide audience is not everybody who buys an espresso machine wants one that gets over-the-air firmware updates. Some people have had enough of the Internet of Things experience and just want simple, streamlined devices. And I think that is totally valid. Nothing wrong with that. This machine is not going in that direction for sure. Now, one other thing that's discussed a lot with this machine in particular is longevity. And to be honest, that's a little bit of an unknown at this point. And this machine is very complex and kind of crammed, and it's got several circuit boards inside to make all of that technology work. And the Series 1 comes with a 2-year standard warranty to kind of give a 24 months of security there, and you can extend that to either 3 or 5 years. I would say this is kind of a no-brainer given how long this machine has been out there for. Now, I do want to give a huge shout out to Jacob Solomon on YouTube, who put together a really cool teardown video on the Series 1. You got to go check that out. I'll link to it in the description, but he takes the whole thing apart. You can see all inside. It took him like 40 minutes, and it paints a picture that this machine could be difficult to repair. But I do have to say that a couple months into using this thing, I think that the introduction of this machine is, to be honest, one of the most significant things to happen in the world of home espresso in several years. You know, people have tried the guided thing before, and it works, but it kind of comes out half-baked. This implementation is really good and approachable for people like Sarah, and the level of capability that is available to somebody like me who really wants a full nerd out on their espresso is really unmatched at $1,500. You know, if I actually had one wish with this machine, it's actually that there would be a more expensive version, even maybe with a little bit more metal on the body, because to be honest, from a capability standpoint, this machine runs with others that are a lot more expensive. And if the whole machine had that same feel, that is something that I think a lot of people would actually be willing to pay for. You know, there are caveats and compromises and philosophies that have been put in place here that not everybody is going to love. But I think the gap between happy enthusiasts and people like Sarah who just want to make a drink with no fuss is basically eliminated with the Series 1. And when it comes to those capabilities, you know, it's not even really close compared to other machines that are at or above this price. You know, I got a machine back there that is very expensive, and this, from a capability standpoint, even far exceed what that one will do. So let me know what you think of the Series 1. I usually like to follow up these first look videos with a lot more detailed content later on. So let me know your questions, and I'll make sure that I get those answered in any subsequent content. I'm really kind of excited to see where this goes, actually. And I think that overall, this is not just a good thing for fellow fans, but it's a good thing for the industry overall. Let me know your take. I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you next time.